What happens when America's sweetheart meets one of Hollywood's most outspoken talk show hosts, and the conversation takes a turn no one saw coming? Today, we revisit one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history, the day Julia Roberts appeared on The View, and the interview spiraled so far off the rails that she ended up walking off set in fury. It was supposed to be a feel-good Tuesday morning. The round table gleamed under the lights. The crowd buzzed with excitement. And the producers were confident they had a perfect segment lined up. Julia Roberts, radiant, gracious, universally beloved, was there to promote her new film, a heartwarming family drama about reconciliation and forgiveness. No one expected the morning's charm to turn into live television chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whoopi Goldberg announced, her tone just a little sharper than usual, "please welcome the incomparable Julia Roberts." Julia emerged in a cream-colored blazer, that signature megawatt smile lighting up the studio. She waved warmly, exchanged hugs with the co-hosts, and took her seat beside Whoopi, completely unaware that she was sitting down to one of the most uncomfortable interviews of her career. "Julia, welcome back to The View," Whoopi began, her voice honeyed but edged. "Always a pleasure to have you here, especially when you're promoting something close to your heart." "Thank you so much for having me," Julia replied graciously. "I'm so proud of this film. It's about family, forgiveness, and finding your way back to love. It's really special to me." The first few minutes were polite, predictable, safe. Julia spoke with warmth and humor, the audience hanging on every word. But gradually, Whoopi began to shift the tone. Her questions became pointed. "You know, Julia," Whoopi said, leaning back with a smirk, "I've watched your career for decades. Tell me, do you ever get tired of playing the same character over and over again?" The air went still. The other co-hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Julia blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?" "Oh, come on," Whoopi chuckled, though the laughter didn't reach her eyes. "You know, the quirky, lovable woman who smiles her way through every film and gets the guy in the end. How many times can you do that and still call it acting?" A low murmur rippled through the audience. Even Joy Behar looked uncomfortable. Julia's trademark smile faltered. She inhaled slowly, keeping her composure. "Well, I think every role I've taken has had its own story, its own heart," she said carefully. "Each one means something different to me." Whoopi tilted her head. "Its own truth," she repeated mockingly. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been coasting on that same smile for 30 years. When was the last time you actually challenged yourself?" The tension was electric now. "I don't think that's fair," Julia replied, her voice firmer. "I've done dramatic roles. I've worked with some of the greatest directors of our time, and I always choose projects that matter to me." "Oh, please," Whoopi scoffed. "You've made a career out of being America's sweetheart. Do you ever wonder what might happen if people saw the real you, not the polished, perfect version?" Julia's cheeks flushed red. She clasped her hands to keep them from trembling. "I think audiences connect with authenticity," she said evenly, "and that's what I try to bring to every role." "Authenticity," Whoopi repeated, laughing harshly. "That's rich coming from someone who's built an empire on playing pretend. Tell me, Julia, when you look in the mirror, do you see an actress? Or do you see a brand?" A hush swept the room. Even the camera crew hesitated, unsure whether to keep filming. Julia's composure finally cracked. "Excuse me," she said sharply, "but what exactly is your problem today, Whoopi?" "My problem," Whoopi snapped back, her tone rising, "is sitting across from someone who spent decades pretending to be this down-to-earth, humble woman when really, you're just another Hollywood fake who's been phoning it in for years." The gasp that followed was audible. Even the live audience didn't know where to look. Julia's eyes flared with disbelief. "You know what?" she said, standing up from her chair. "I came here to talk about my work, not to be insulted. I've respected you, Whoopi, for a long time, but this is just mean-spirited. Whoopi folded her arms. If you can't handle a little honesty, maybe you shouldn't be sitting at this table. Julia stared at her, hurt, furious. Done. Honesty, she said, her voice trembling. There's a difference between honesty and cruelty. And what you just did? That's cruelty. She pulled off her microphone, her hands shaking, but her head high. I don't need to be part of this circus, she said quietly. The audience broke into uneasy whispers as Julia turned toward the exit. Julia, wait. Joy called out, but Julia didn't look back. Whoopi muttered under her breath. Guess America's sweetheart doesn't like tough questions. Julia stopped at the edge of the stage, turned briefly toward her, and said with cold precision, No, Whoopi. I just don't like bullies. And with that, Julia Roberts, one of Hollywood's most beloved stars, walked off the view, leaving behind stunned silence, a shaken crew, and one of the most unforgettable moments in daytime television history. Julia. I came here to talk about my work. Not to be insulted by someone who clearly has a personal issue with me. Her tone was even, almost too controlled. Whoopi, personal issue. She laughs bitterly, honey. I don't know you well enough to have a personal issue. I just call it like I see it, and what I see is someone who's been coasting on past glory for far too long. Joy tried to crack a joke to ease the tension, but one look from Whoopi silenced her. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, desperate to pivot. Sunny, let's get back to the film. Whoopi cuts her off, waving her hand. No. Let's have a real conversation for once. Julia wants to talk about authenticity and truth. Okay, let's talk about how someone can play the same role for 30 years and still call herself a serious actress. Julia's hands clenched the arms of her chair, knuckles white. Julia, I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Whoopi smirking, oh, but you do. Because this is live television. And walking off would just prove my point that you can't handle real criticism. The audience shifted uncomfortably. The air changed. What was entertainment now felt like cruelty. Julia's eyes flared, her voice trembling not with fear but fury. Julia, real criticism. That's what you call this ambush. Criticism is supposed to be constructive. Whoopi. Not a personal attack wrapped in sarcasm. Whoopi leaning forward. Mocking, oh, so now I'm attacking you. Please. I'm just asking the questions everyone else is too polite to ask. Beat, when was the last time you took a risk? When was the last time you surprised anyone? Julia snapped. Julia, every single project I take is a risk. Do you have any idea what it takes to open yourself up on screen, to be vulnerable in front of the world? Glaring at her, but clearly you wouldn't understand that the jab landed hard. Whoopi's expression darkened. Whoopi, what's that supposed to mean? Julia, it means maybe someone who's spent the last 20 years behind a desk, taking shots at other people's work, shouldn't be lecturing anyone about artistic bravery. The audience gasped. The hosts froze. Whoopi's eyes narrowed to slits. Whoopi, are you questioning my credentials as an actress? Julia, I'm questioning your right to tear others down when you haven't created anything meaningful in years. It's easy to criticize from the sidelines, isn't it? Whoopi stood so abruptly her chair rolled back. Whoopi sidelines. Sidelines. I've got an Oscar, an Emmy, a Grammy, and a Tony. I've been breaking barriers in this business since before you knew what a close-up was. Julia rising too, voice steady but shaking with anger. And when was the last time you used that talent instead of just talking about it? When was the last time you built something instead of tearing people down? Gasps rippled through the audience. The tension was volcanic. Security began inching toward the stage. In the control room, the director hovered over the switch to cut to commercial. Whoopi pointed a trembling finger across the table. Whoopi, you know what your problem is, Julia. You've had everything handed to you. One lucky romantic comedy, and you've been coasting on that smile ever since. Some of us had to fight for every opportunity. Julia laughs bitterly. Fight. You think I didn't fight? You think I didn't face rejection, humiliation, doubt? You have no idea what I had to prove every single time I stepped in front of a camera. Whoopi, that smile shakes her head, that perfectly packaged focus group smile. You think it makes you relatable. Julia leaned forward, her voice sharp enough to cut through steel. Julia. And you think bitterness makes you authentic. The studio fell dead silent. Even the audience didn't know whether to clap or cry. For the first time in a long time, Whoopi had no comeback. Do you practice that smile in the mirror every morning? Whoopi sneered. At least I'm not bitter and jealous attacking people who are actually still working. Julia snapped back, her tone cutting like glass. This whole thing is pathetic, Whoopi. You're pathetic. The audience gasped. The studio seemed to freeze. For a split second, not even the cameras dared to move. Then chaos erupted, Joy, Sunny, and Alyssa all speaking at once. Trying desperately to cool the inferno that had ignited between two Hollywood legends. Jealous? Whoopi's voice cracked like thunder. Jealous of what? Your cookie-cutter career. Your predictable choices. Or maybe your complete inability to disappear into a character. Because you're too narcissistic to let Julia Roberts take a back seat to the role. Julia leaned forward, eyes blazing. My narcissism. That's rich coming from someone who's turned every conversation on this show into being about Whoopi Goldberg for 15 years. You can't let anyone else shine because you can't stand not being the center of attention. Ladies, please, Joy Behar pleaded, half laughing, half panicked. Let's all take a breath. This is live television. No, Whoopi barked, never breaking eye contact with Julia. She wants to talk about my career. Fine, at least I've never been afraid to take on controversial roles. I've done stories that matter. I didn't hide behind pretty dresses and romantic comedies because I was too scared to show people who I really am. Who I really am. Julia's voice was rising, trembling with fury. You don't know the first thing about me. You see what fits your narrative, a princess who got lucky. But you're wrong. You couldn't be more wrong. Am I? Whoopi challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, you look exactly like what I said, a brand. A product. America's sweetheart, clinging to an image because that's all you've got left. Julia took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her tone was suddenly calm, almost surgical. You know what, Whoopi? I think I finally understand what this is about. It's not my career. It's not authenticity. This is about you feeling threatened by someone who managed to stay relevant without becoming bitter and cruel. Threatened by you. Whoopi scoffed, though her voice wavered. Please, you're a relic. A throwback to when actresses only had to be pretty and smile for the camera. The industry's moved on, Julia. Maybe it's time you did too. The industry's moved on. Julia echoed, laughing incredulously. Then why am I here promoting a new film while you're sitting behind a table gossiping about people who still have careers? Who's the relic now? The audience audibly gasped. Whoopi's fists clenched. Her composure cracked. You have no idea what you're talking about, she hissed. I've forgotten more about acting than you'll ever know. Then maybe it's time you remembered some of it, Julia said quietly. Instead of spending your days tearing down people who still create, Sunny Hostin tried once more to intervene. Maybe we could talk about Julia's new film? But Whoopi waved her off. No, we're finishing this. Julia thinks she can come on my show and insult me. She's going to hear the truth. Your show. Julia scoffed. Last I checked, this was The View, not The Whoopi Show. But I guess that's the problem, you've never been able to share the spotlight. I don't need to share it, Whoopi snapped. Not with someone who's been coasting on fumes for a decade. Coasting. Julia repeated, deadly quiet. I'm here working while you sit here, every day dissecting other people's accomplishments because you don't have any new ones of your own. The studio went silent. The tension was suffocating. You want to talk accomplishments? Whoopi shouted, her voice raw now. Let's talk about your last 5 movies, can you even remember what they were? Because no one else can. That did it. Julia stood, her face calm, her eyes bright with restrained fury. You know what, Whoopi? I came here thinking I'd have a conversation with a colleague. Maybe even someone I respected. But what I found is a bitter woman, jealous, angry, and desperate to stay relevant by tearing down anyone who still is. Whoopi opened her mouth, but no sound came out. How dare you? She finally stammered. How dare I? Julia stepped closer. How dare I defend myself after you've tried to humiliate me on live TV? This wasn't an interview, it was an ambush. And it says far more about you than it ever will about me. The audience was silent, no gasps, no murmurs. Just stunned disbelief. Julia's voice softened, steady as she looked straight into the camera. For anyone watching, I came here to talk about a film about family and forgiveness. But instead, I was met with cruelty, with bitterness, from someone who's forgotten what professionalism looks like. Whoopi tried to interrupt, but Julia raised a hand. No, you've said enough. You've shown the world exactly who you are, and it's not admirable. It's not wise. It's small. Julia picked up her purse. The room seemed to hold its breath. Julia, please, Joy began. But Julia didn't turn. I've been patient, Joy, she said softly. But I'm done being patient with someone who doesn't deserve it. You walk out of here. You'll regret it, Whoopi said weakly. The only thing I regret, Julia said, slinging her bag over her shoulder, is that I waited this long to stand up for myself. She turned to Whoopi. You should be ashamed. This isn't who you used to be, and, I hope, one day you find your way back to her. With that, Julia turned and walked off the set. The cameras followed her every step, her poise, her silence. The echo of her heels across the studio floor. At the edge of the stage, she paused and faced the audience one last time. To those who tuned in, hoping to hear about my new film, I'm sorry. But sometimes, standing up for yourself matters more than promoting a movie. And then she was gone. The studio was frozen. Whoopi sat motionless, staring at the empty chair across from her. Joy exhaled shakily. Well, she murmured into the stunned silence that was unexpected. The control room scrambled to cut to commercial, but the damage was already done. The headlines were writing themselves by that evening. Every network in America would replay the moment Julia Roberts walked off The View that day. Hollywood's brightest smile finally dimmed, not out of defeat, but defiance. And the woman left behind at the table, Whoopi Goldberg, would learn the hard way that even legends can fall when they forget their grace.